Ambassador Kim Minji stepped off the transport shuttle onto Kepler 442, a massive space station floating in the void between star systems. This place was supposed to be neutral ground, where different species could meet and talk without fear. The station was huge, with gleaming metal corridors and viewing ports that showed the endless darkness of space dotted with distant stars. Minji had made this journey many times before. She was Earth's best diplomat, known for her calm voice and sharp mind. Today's meeting should have been simple, just another trade discussion between humans and the hegemony empire. Earth needed rare metals for their growing colonies, and the empire had plenty to spare. It should have been a win-win situation. But from the moment she entered the conference room, Minji knew something was wrong. The empire's delegation sat. On one side of a long table, their alien forms hunched in expensive chairs. Their leader, High Executor Vorthak, was a tall creature with 4 arms and skin like polished stone. His eyes glowed a cold blue, and when he looked at Minji, she felt like she was looking at something that viewed humans as insects. "So, the little Earth creature has come to beg again," Vorthak said in perfect English, though his voice carried a tone that made every word sound like an insult. The other Empire representatives laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Minji kept her face calm and took her seat. She had dealt with arrogant aliens before. "High Executor, I'm here to discuss the trade agreements we've been working on for months. I believe we can reach terms that benefit both our peoples." Vorthak leaned back in his chair and gestured with one of his 4 hands. A holographic document appeared above the table, filled with text in both human and Empire languages. "These are our final terms. Your species will accept them, or there will be no deal." As Minji read through the terms, her heart sank. This wasn't a trade agreement. It was a surrender document. The Empire wanted Earth to give up control of 3 entire star systems. They wanted humans to pay massive taxes on everything they produced. Worst of all, they wanted Earth to send 10% of their population to work as laborers in Empire factories. "These terms are completely unacceptable," Minji said, keeping her voice steady. "You're asking us to become slaves, not trading partners." Vorthak's blue eyes flared brighter. "Your species is weak, small. You have been in space for less than 200 years while the Empire has ruled the galaxy for 10,000. You should be grateful we even acknowledge your existence. Humans may be new to space, but we're not weak," Minji replied, "and we're certainly not slaves. Let's find terms that work for both of us. Trade should make everyone stronger, not create masters and servants." The room fell silent. The other Empire representatives looked at each other, nervously. In their culture, no one talked back to a High Executor. Ever. Vorthak stood up slowly, all 4 of his arms tensing. "You dare refuse the Empire? You dare speak to me as an equal?" His voice was getting louder, and other aliens in the station's corridors stopped to listen. "I speak to you as one intelligent being to another," Minji said, standing up as well. She was much smaller than Vorthak, but she didn't back down. "If the Empire can't see the value in fair partnership, then maybe we don't need this deal." What happened next shocked everyone watching. Vorthak pulled out a weapon that looked like a twisted piece of black metal. Energy crackled along its surface as he pointed it at Minji. "Let this be a lesson to all lesser species," he announced, loudly, making sure the station's security cameras caught every word. "This is what happens when you forget your place in the galaxy." Minji had just enough time to send a quick message through her communication device before the weapon fired. The energy beam hit her in the chest and she collapsed to the floor. The other human diplomats in her team rushed to help her, but it was too late. The execution was broadcast live across the Galactic Communication Network. Billions of beings, on thousands of worlds, watched as the Empire killed an unarmed human diplomat. Most alien species saw it as just another display of Empire power. They had seen this kind of thing before, but they had never seen humanity's response. Within minutes of Minji's death, every human military base, research station, and government facility received the same message. It was only 3 words, but those words changed everything. Unleash Protocol 7. On Earth, Admiral Park Jiho was in his office when the message came through. He was Minji's older brother, and when he saw the news of her death, his hands shook with rage. But when he read those 3 words, his expression changed from grief to something much more dangerous. He picked up his secure communication device and began making calls. All across human space, similar calls were being made. Scientists stopped their experiments. Factory workers left their machines. Families said goodbye to each other. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been keeping secrets. Very dangerous secrets. The first sign that something was different came from the deep space monitoring stations scattered across the galaxy. Alien sensor operators who had been tracking human activity for years suddenly found their screens lighting up with new contacts. Ships were moving in the outer regions of the Sol system, far beyond where any human vessels were supposed to be. Admiral Park Jiho stood in what had been an empty asteroid field beyond Pluto just days before. Now massive construction platforms were rising from hidden underground facilities, their surfaces gleaming with fresh metal. These weren't the small, simple ships that humans had been using for trade and exploration. These were warships, and they were huge. "How long have you been building these?" asked Captain Lee Sujin, one of Park's most trusted officers. She stared in amazement at the fleet taking shape around them. The ships were sleek and angular, nothing like the bulky cargo vessels that other species knew humans for. 60 years, Park replied, watching as robotic arms attached weapon systems to the hull of a massive battleship. "Ever since we first made contact with the Empire, we knew this day might come." The story went back to humanity's early days in space. When human explorers first ventured beyond their own solar system, they found something unexpected. Ancient shipwrecks drifted in the void between stars, vessels from civilizations that had died out millions of years ago. While other species saw these wrecks as curiosities or sources of scrap metal, humans saw them as textbooks. Human scientists spent decades studying every piece of alien technology they could find. They learned how to build engines that could fold space, weapons that could crack planets, and shields that could stop almost anything. But they kept it secret, showing the galaxy only their most basic ships while building something far more dangerous in the shadows. The hidden shipyards had been disguised as mining operations and research stations. To anyone watching from the outside, humans looked like they were just digging rocks and studying space dust. In reality, they were preparing for war. "Sir, we're getting reports from all across human space," reported Lieutenant Kim Dong-yun from the communication station. "The evacuation is ahead of schedule. Civilian transports are heading for the hidden colonies." Park nodded. This was another part of humanity's secret preparation. While the galaxy knew about Earth and the major human colonies, there were dozens of settlements that no alien had ever seen. Hidden worlds tucked away in remote star systems, designed to keep humanity alive, even if Earth fell. Right now, millions of humans were packing their belongings and boarding ships bound for these secret refugees. Children said goodbye to their friends, not knowing if they would ever return. Families left behind homes they had lived in for generations, but they went willingly because they understood what was at stake. Back on Earth, the transformation was incredible to watch. Factories that had been making furniture and electronics were now producing ammunition and armor plating. Car manufacturing plants were assembling fighter jets. Even chocolate factories had been converted to produce military rations. Dr. Choi Min-hwan, Earth's leading weapons scientist, stood in what used to be a smartphone factory. Now the assembly lines were putting together something very different. Handheld energy weapons based on technology found in a million-year-old alien wreck. "The Empire thinks we're primitive," he said to his team of engineers. "They think our weapons are chemical explosives and metal bullets. They have no idea what we've really been working on." The weapons coming off the production lines looked almost organic, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the light. They were powered by the same energy sources that ran the ancient alien ships, but improved with human engineering. Across the galaxy, Empire intelligence officers were filing reports about the sudden burst of human activity. Most of their superiors laughed when they read them. Humans building a fleet? Converting their entire economy to war production? It seemed impossible. "They're scared," High Executor Vortak told the Empire Council. "This is exactly what we expected. A primitive species, making noise before they surrender. Send a punishment fleet to Earth, make them submit." But some Empire observers were not so confident. Commander Zelthak, an old soldier who had fought in many wars, watched the intelligence reports with growing concern. "These humans," he told his staff, "they're not acting like a species that's about to surrender. They're acting like a species that's been planning for this moment." Meanwhile, Admiral Park received a message that made him smile for the first time since his sister's death. The message came from the hidden research facility on Titan, where humanity's most secret project had been taking place. "Project Ghostwalk is complete," the message read. "All ships are ready for deployment." Park looked out at his fleet. Hundreds of warships now filled the space around him, their hulls bristling with weapons that could tear apart anything the Empire had ever built. But the most dangerous ships weren't even visible. They were there, floating in the darkness, but cloaked by technology that made them invisible to every sensor the Empire possessed. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Park ordered. "Operation Retribution begins in 72 hours. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you kill a human diplomat." The Empire was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to plan, to prepare, and to remember. They had been waiting 60 years for this moment, and they were ready. The Empire's punishment fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system with all the confidence of a predator approaching wounded prey. 200 massive warships moved, in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the authority of 10,000 years of galactic dominance. Admiral Krexval, the Empire's most decorated military commander, stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled with satisfaction. "Begin the standard intimidation broadcast," he ordered. "Tell the humans they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will reduce their pathetic planet to ash." But as the message was transmitted toward Earth, something strange happened. The human colonies that should have been frantically trying to negotiate or flee were completely silent. No desperate pleas for mercy, no frantic attempts to contact the Empire, just silence. "Sir," reported the fleet's sensor officer, "I'm not detecting any human ships in the system. Their orbital stations appear to be abandoned." Admiral Krexval frowned. This wasn't how conquests usually went. Most species would at least try to put up some kind of defense even if it was hopeless. "Scan deeper. They must be hiding behind their moon or something." That's when the first human ship appeared. It materialized out of empty space like a ghost becoming solid, directly above the Empire flagship. The human vessel was sleek and angular, nothing like the clunky cargo ships the Empire was familiar with. Before anyone could react, it fired. The weapon that hit the flagship wasn't like anything in the Empire's databases. Instead of an energy beam or projectile, it seemed to bend space itself around the target. The flagship's shields, which could normally stop planet-killing weapons, simply folded in on themselves and disappeared. "What was that?" Krexval shouted, but his question was answered by dozens more ships appearing around his fleet. They came from every direction, above, below, and from the sides. Some materialized from empty space, others seemed to rise up from inside asteroids, and a few actually seemed to phase through the hulls of Empire ships before becoming solid again. Captain Yang Jiwan commanded one of the human stealth ships. She watched through her view screen as the Empire fleet tried to respond to the sudden attack. Their ships turned to face threats that disappeared as quickly as they appeared, only to be hit from completely different directions. "Their formation is breaking apart," reported her tactical officer. "They don't know how to fight an enemy they can't see coming." "Good," Yang replied. "Begin Phase 2. Target their command vessels, but don't destroy them. We want some of those officers alive." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire's massive ships, built to dominate through overwhelming firepower, found themselves fighting shadows. Human ships would appear, strike with devastating precision, then vanish again before the Empire could return fire. But the humans weren't just using superior technology. They were using psychology as a weapon. Lieutenant Park Sung-min was in charge of the Human Psychological Warfare Division. His job was to monitor Empire communications and turn their own nature against them. The Empire's strict hierarchy, which had been a source of strength for millennia, was now becoming their weakness. "The Empire commanders are starting to blame each other," he reported to Admiral Park. Admiral Krexval just accused his subordinates of cowardice. 3 captains have already requested permission to retreat. Admiral Park smiled grimly. Excellent. Send targeted messages to the lower-ranking officers. Let them know that surrender will be accepted, but only from individual ships, not from their commanders. Within hours, Empire ships began breaking formation. Some tried to flee, only to find human vessels already waiting along their escape routes. Others attempted to surrender, but found their own commanders threatening to execute them for cowardice. The Empire had always ruled through fear, but now that fear was being turned against them, human hackers had infiltrated their communication systems, sending fake orders that contradicted each other. Lower-ranking officers received messages claiming their superiors had been branded as traitors. Captains were told that their fellow captains were planning to betray them. Meanwhile, Admiral Park was demonstrating something the Empire had never encountered before: 3-dimensional warfare across multiple star systems. While the main battle raged around Earth, human strike teams were simultaneously attacking Empire supply depots hundreds of light-years away. Commander Lee Hyunwoo led one of these raids on an Empire fuel station near the Vega system. His small fleet of human ships arrived to find the station defended by only a dozen Empire vessels, most of their main forces having been sent to Earth. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we're not just here to destroy supplies. We're here to send a message. Make sure some of their people survived to report what they saw." The attack was swift and brutal. Human ships moved with a coordination that seemed impossible, striking multiple targets simultaneously while avoiding every defensive measure the Empire tried. When it was over, the fuel station was destroyed, along with enough supplies to fuel 50 Empire warships. But the most devastating part wasn't the physical damage. It was what the surviving Empire officers reported back to their superiors. Humans were fighting a war across the entire galaxy at the same time. While their main fleet was attacking Earth, other human forces were hitting Empire assets everywhere. "How is this possible?" Admiral Krexval demanded, studying the reports flooding in from across Empire space. "They're a minor species with a handful of primitive ships." His intelligence officer, Commander Vexthu, looked terrified as he delivered his report. "Sir, our analysts believe the humans have been planning this for decades. These aren't desperate attacks. This is a coordinated military strategy on a galactic scale." As the battle around Earth continued, something even more alarming became clear. The human ships weren't just holding their own, they were getting stronger. Every time they captured an Empire vessel, they seemed to learn something new. Every time they studied a piece of Empire technology, their own weapons became more effective. Dr. Kim Jinso, working from a mobile research station hidden in an asteroid field, was coordinating the real-time analysis of captured Empire equipment. "We're uploading new weapon modifications to all fleet units," she reported. "The Empire's shield frequencies are now completely mapped. Our next volley should punch right through their defenses." And it did. The next wave of human attacks overwhelmed the Empire fleet's remaining shields as if they weren't even there. Ships that had seemed invincible hours earlier were now burning wrecks drifting through space. Admiral Krexval, his flagship crippled and half his fleet destroyed or captured, finally understood what he was facing. This wasn't a punishment mission anymore. This was survival. "All remaining ships," he broadcast on an emergency frequency, "retreat immediately. Full speed to the nearest Empire stronghold." But as his remaining vessels tried to flee, they found human ships waiting for them at every jump point. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was just getting started. The news of the Empire fleet's defeat at Earth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 10,000 years, someone had not just fought the Empire and survived. They had won decisively. On 1,000 different worlds, alien species that had lived under Empire rule for generations whispered the impossible word: hope. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Empire strongholds, while blue dots showed human positions. What had started as a single blue dot at Earth was now spreading like ripples across the star map. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Empire worlds," reported Captain Kim Daeho. "They're asking for terms." "What kind of terms are they offering?" Park asked. Complete surrender, sir. They don't want to fight us. This was exactly what Park had hoped for. The human strategy wasn't just about winning battles. It was about winning without having to destroy entire civilizations. Every empire world that surrendered meant millions of lives saved and resources that could be used to rebuild instead of destroy. But the surrenders weren't coming from fear alone. They were coming because of how humans treated their enemies after victory. When the first Empire colony had fallen to human forces, the aliens there had expected the worst. The Empire's history was filled with examples of what happened to defeated enemies, slavery, execution, or worse. Instead, the humans had done something unprecedented. They had offered the aliens a choice: join the growing rebellion against the Empire or simply remain neutral. No punishment, no revenge, just freedom to choose their own path. Commander Choi Yuna was in charge of negotiations with surrendering worlds. She had spent weeks on the planet Carrion Prime, meeting with local leaders who couldn't believe what they were hearing. "You're not going to enslave our people?" asked Governor Thexmar, a reptilian alien whose species had served the Empire for over 3,000 years. "Why would we do that?" Yuna replied. "We're fighting the Empire because they treat other species as slaves. It would be pretty hypocritical of us to do the same thing. But this is how conquest works. The strong rule the weak." Yuna shook her head. "That's how the Empire works. Humans believe something different. We believe that everyone deserves to be free to make their own choices." Word of these conversations spread quickly through underground networks that had existed for centuries. Species that had been oppressed for millennia began to see humans not as new conquerors but as liberators. More importantly, they began to see a chance to fight back against their oppressors. The Zephyrians were the first major species to openly join the human cause. They had been forced to serve as the Empire's engineers for over 2,000 years. Their natural talent for technology exploited to build the Empire's war machines. When human ambassadors approached them with an offer of alliance, the Zephyrian Council didn't hesitate. "For 2 millennia we have built weapons for those who enslaved us," declared Chief Engineer Veltaran at a secret meeting. "Now we will build weapons for those who would set us free." The aquatic Merthani followed shortly after, bringing with them knowledge of underwater worlds that the Empire had never fully controlled. The insectoid Hiveka offered their incredible coordination abilities. The energy-based Luxori provided technology that could disrupt Empire communications across entire star systems. Emperor Malthius watched these developments from his throne room on the Empire capital world with growing rage. Reports flooded in daily of more worlds joining the human rebellion, more species abandoning their loyalty to the Empire. His military advisors painted an increasingly grim picture. "Your Majesty," reported General Korthvan, "we've lost contact with over 60 worlds in the past month. Our intelligence suggests they've either surrendered to the humans or actively joined their cause." "Impossible," Malthius snarled. "The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. These species are nothing without us." "With respect, Your Majesty, that may no longer be true. The humans have given them something we never did. A reason to fight for themselves rather than for us." Malthius rose from his throne, his massive form towering over the assembled generals. He was old even by his species' standards, having ruled the Empire for over 800 years. He had seen countless rebellions rise and fall, had crushed dozens of species who dared to challenge his authority. "Assemble the Imperial Guard," he commanded. "Every elite ship, every veteran crew, every prototype weapon. I will lead them personally. It's time to remind the galaxy why the Empire has ruled for so long." The Imperial Guard was the Empire's most elite military force. These weren't regular soldiers. They were the best warriors from 100 different species, equipped with the Empire's most advanced technology, trained from birth to serve the Emperor himself. No enemy had ever faced the full might of the Imperial Guard and survived. Admiral Park received intelligence about the Emperor's plans from Zephyrian spies who had infiltrated the Empire's communication networks. As he studied the reports, he felt a mixture of anticipation and sadness. This would likely be the final battle of the war, and he knew exactly how it would end. "Sir?" asked Captain Lee Sujin. Are you concerned about facing the Imperial Guard? Park smiled and pulled up a holographic display showing centuries of Empire military records. The Emperor thinks he knows how to fight because he's been winning for 10,000 years. But he's always been fighting the same way: overwhelming force, intimidation, divide, and conquer. He gestured to another display showing the current positions of human and allied forces across the galaxy. What he doesn't understand is that we've been studying his methods for 60 years. Every battle the Empire has ever fought, every strategy they've ever used, every weakness they've ever shown, we know it all. The final battle took place in the Nexus system, a strategic location with jump points leading to dozens of different regions of the galaxy. Emperor Malthius arrived with over 500 of the Empire's most powerful warships, expecting to crush the human rebellion in one decisive engagement. Instead, he found himself facing something unprecedented in galactic history. The human fleet was there, but so were ships from dozens of other species. Zephyrian vessels with energy weapons that could punch through any armor. Mirthani ships that could move through space like they were swimming through water. Hivica swarms that moved with perfect coordination. Luxori energy beings that could disable Empire ships without firing a single shot. "What is this?" Malthius demanded as he watched the impossible sight on his view screen. Admiral Park's voice came through on all Empire communication frequencies. "This is what happens when you treat other species as equals instead of slaves, Your Majesty. This is what unity looks like." The battle that followed wasn't just a military engagement, it was a revolution. For the first time in galactic history, dozens of different species fought side by side as partners rather than master and servant. The Empire's forces, despite their superior individual power, couldn't adapt to fighting an enemy that used completely different tactics and technologies in perfect coordination. Emperor Malthius, watching his elite forces fall one by one to an alliance he had never imagined possible, finally understood what he was truly facing. This wasn't just a war between the Empire and humanity. This was the end of everything the Empire had represented for 10,000 years. The imperial capital world of Thrace Prime had never fallen to an enemy force in its 10,000-year history. Its massive towers stretched toward the sky like metal mountains, each one a symbol of the Empire's absolute power over the galaxy. Now, as Admiral Park walked through the empty streets, those same towers cast long shadows over the rubble of a defeated regime. The final battle had lasted only 6 hours, when Emperor Malthius saw his elite Imperial Guard being systematically destroyed by the coordinated alliance of dozens of species. He had tried one last desperate gambit. He ordered his remaining ships to target civilian populations on allied worlds, threatening to commit genocide if the rebels didn't surrender. That threat had been his final mistake. The moment those orders went out over Empire communication channels, every remaining species still loyal to the Empire abandoned their posts. Even the Emperor's own bodyguards had quietly stepped aside when human soldiers arrived at the palace doors. "Admiral," called Captain Yang Jiwan as she approached through the ruins of what had once been the Empire's military command center. "We've received confirmation from across the galaxy. The last Empire holdouts have surrendered. It's over." Park nodded, but he didn't feel the satisfaction he had expected. The war was won, but the real work was just beginning. As he looked around, at the devastation, he thought about his sister Minji and wondered what she would have wanted him to do next. The answer came to him as he watched alien civilians emerging from hiding places throughout the city. These weren't Empire soldiers or officials. They were ordinary people who had lived their entire lives under Imperial rule. They looked at the human soldiers with a mixture of fear and hope, not knowing what to expect from their new conquerors. "Captain Yang," Park said quietly, "send a message to all human forces throughout the galaxy. Any Empire civilian who wants to return to their homeworld will be given free transport. Anyone who wants to stay and help rebuild will be welcomed. But no one will be forced to do anything. Sir, some of our allies are expecting compensation for their help in the war." Park turned to face her. "What kind of compensation?" "Territory, resources, Some of the HFY representatives mentioned claiming several Empire worlds for themselves. Set up a meeting with all allied representatives, Park ordered. We need to discuss the future of the galaxy. 3 days later, the ruins of the Imperial Senate building hosted a gathering unlike any in galactic history. Representatives from 47 different species sat around a massive circular table, each delegation equal in size regardless of their military contribution to the war. The Zephyrian engineer Velteran spoke first. Admiral Park, our species, has waited 2,000 years for freedom from the Empire. Now that we have it, we wish to claim the industrial worlds we were forced to build. Similar demands came from other species. The Mirthani wanted the ocean worlds. The HFY claimed the agricultural planets their people had worked as slaves. Each group had suffered under Empire rule, and each felt they deserved compensation. Park listened to every speaker before standing to address the assembly. I understand your anger, he began. Every species here has been wronged by the Empire. But I want to ask you all a question. If we divide up the Empire's territory among ourselves, how are we different from conquerors? The room fell silent. Ambassador Luxthai, representing the energy-based Luxori, flickered with confusion. But this is how wars end. The victors claim the spoils. That's how the Empire's wars ended, Park replied. But this war wasn't fought to create a new empire. It was fought to end the concept of empire altogether. He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. I propose something that has never been tried before. A galactic alliance where every species, no matter how large or small, has an equal voice in their own governance. No more emperors, no more conquered worlds, just free peoples working together. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species were skeptical. They had been oppressed for so long that the idea of true equality seemed impossible. Others, worried that without strong central authority, the galaxy would collapse into chaos. Dr. Choi Minhwan, now serving as humanity's chief diplomat, addressed many of these concerns. We're not proposing anarchy, she explained to the HFY delegation. We're proposing democracy on a galactic scale. Each world would govern itself, but major decisions affecting multiple species would be made by representatives from every member world. The breakthrough came when the former Empire species began to speak. Governor Thexmar of Carrion Prime, whose people had served the Empire for 3,000 years, stood to address the assembly. For millennia my people believed that strength meant domination, he said, his reptilian features showing genuine emotion. The humans have shown us that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. We support this alliance. One by one, other former Empire species added their voices. The Valdorian traders, who had been forced to give 90% of their profits to the Empire, now saw a chance to trade freely. The Christek builders, whose architectural marvels had been claimed by Empire nobles, could finally create for their own people. The formal establishment of the Galactic Alliance took place exactly 1 year after Ambassador Kim Minji's assassination. The ceremony was held on Kepler 442, the same neutral station where she had died. Admiral Park stood at the podium where his sister had made her final stand, looking out at representatives from over 300 different species. Today we established not just a new government, but a new way of thinking about how intelligent beings should treat each other, he announced. The Alliance Charter, which every member world has signed, establishes one fundamental principle. Every sapient being has the right to dignity, freedom, and self-determination. The trial of the Empire's war criminals had concluded the week before. Emperor Malthius and his closest advisors faced charges of genocide, slavery, and crimes against sentient beings. The primary charge, however, was the assassination of Ambassador Kim Minji, not because it was the worst crime they had committed, but because it represented everything the Empire had stood for. High Executor Vorthak, the alien who had killed Minji, sat in the defendant's chair as the verdict was read. You are found guilty of murder, terrorism, and crimes against galactic peace, announced Judge Chen Wujin, himself a former diplomat. But more than that, you are guilty of believing that might makes right, that the strong have the right to dominate the weak. The sentences were not executions. The Alliance had decided that becoming killers would make them no better than those they had defeated. Instead, the war criminals would spend their lives in rehabilitation, learning about the societies they had oppressed and working to repair the damage they had caused. As the ceremony concluded, Park unveiled the final element of the new galactic order. The Kim Minji protocols established new rules for diplomatic contact between species. Never again would an ambassador be harmed for doing their job. Never again would negotiations be conducted under threat of violence. My sister believed that talking was always better than fighting, Park said as he activated the memorial display showing Minji's image. She died because she refused to let her people become slaves, but her death gave birth to something she would have loved, a galaxy where no one has to kneel to anyone else. As representatives from hundreds of worlds signed the Alliance Charter, the galaxy began its first day of true freedom in 10,000 years. The Age of Empires was over. The Age of Cooperation had begun,